agenda item about communications and community outreach. So this gives me the opportunity to publicly announce that I'm very excited that Julie Evans and Dave Smith have volunteered to be our POCs on communications, media, and community outreach. And so I asked them if they would be willing to just give us a quick high level of their thinking. Now this is very early stages. It's just a general idea. We're all going to have to talk about it a little bit later and come to agreement if this vision works for us. But the point is just for them to give us a little bit of a flavor. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. David and I have enjoyed the opportunity to coordinate back and forth, kick around some ideas, and everything we have to present today is certainly in just a very preliminary draft form. We have talked a little bit about, because we're still in the training and the development, the information dissemination hasn't really, come to full fruition and formalized. Now that we have our emails on the team site, hopefully that will be a lot easier, but we'd like to encourage folks to chime in with questions or suggestions during this walkthrough, and then everything, again, we will circulate formally through Teams so that people have a chance to provide comments and feedback and ask questions before any of this is final. Dave, do you want to add anything?
Nope, that's exactly right.
Okay. I think I can share my screen if that's the right way. Let me do this. Sorry about that. Okay, can everyone see this communication and outreach development plan?
Yep.
Okay. We will just go over agenda really high level. We wanted to give points of contact, talk about the plan documents that we're going to go through, our approach to developing those documents, some example content, and then next steps. Again, all of this is draft. We fully intend to get give everyone an opportunity to wordsmith or add to or change any of the directions that we're going in. But we wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge that David and I have taken on this role. We certainly recognize that this will be communication of the COB, and so to the extent possible, we really want to make sure that we get everyone's input and everyone will have a chance to review and approve things before they have to go out through formal communication channels. We have been working very closely with Mummy, who's added a ton of value to our process, just helping us review some of our framework and coordinate with county staff. We are working still in progress with the Arlington County staff to figure out exactly what protocols and processes we need to follow to make sure that this gets done correctly and synchronizes with existing county staff and resource activities as much as possible. I'll turn this over to David.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and so here are some principles that we wanted to share in connection with the communication plan and the outreach plan. None of these are controversial, but we thought they were important enough to go over because they do drive what we expect the oversight board is going to do. Transparency, of course, is critical, and to be effective, we need to be transparent. I mean, the community needs to know who we are and what we're doing, and so transparency is a key guiding principle. Independence is also particularly critical for us as the oversight board. Our role in under the ordinance is to increase and maintain trust between the public and the Arlington Police, as well as the county board and the county manager. So we have a uniquely independent role, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but That's a key guiding principle. So public engagement, also sort of an offshoot of transparency, and I think, you know, part of county ordinance and probably state law as well. So we're going to continue to follow that. And confidentiality also important, because we will, once we get up and running, be looking at personally identifiable information, confidential information, as part of the review of misconduct allegations, and also potentially in connection with policy issues. So we want to be sure that the public and the police and all the stakeholders trust that when we come into contact with that information, that we will keep it confidential. So that's just a quick overview of the principles that we wanted to share. Julie, do you want to jump to the next slide? I don't think I can advance it. So yeah, communications protocol. Does this slide have a drop down as well, or is this
Yeah, it does.
So in connection with the communications protocol, some of the things that we want to do are make sure that we have a point of contact for who we're dealing with and assign clear roles and responsibilities, sort of a basic need for efficiency. We expect to have some schedule of planned communications, and Julie can talk about that later. And similarly, a set protocol for how the Oversight Board will communicate. And Julie can go into that a little further in depth. It's also important, I think, going back to what I said about independence, that we have not only a communications protocol that's consistent with and takes advantage of the existing pathways, if you will, that the county has set up, because it wouldn't make sense in connection with communication to reinvent the wheel. But with regard to the outreach plan, which we see as a separate entity, I do think it's important for the Oversight Board to stake its own plan there, and certainly can take advantage of the existing channels and so forth that the county has created, but more importantly, to create our own, because it is critical for the board to hear from the community, to understand what the issues are in their interaction with the police. And the chief and the Arlington County Police already do a lot of outreach, which is great, and we will be fully, you know, aware of that. But on our own, I think it's, again, part of our mandate to have our own outreach so that we know what the community is saying with regard to their interaction with the police. So we haven't gotten quite as far in terms of drafting the outreach plan, but we wanted to just outline that it's important, and it should identify, you know, a set of outreach channels and provide public information on how and when to contact the board. And Julie can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Julie, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Yeah, so for the communication protocol, we wanted to make sure, and this was something David and I stumbled upon amongst ourselves, you know, how and when do we share what information with whom? So we have created a draft communication outline, but we are still working very closely with the Arlington County staff to make sure that we incorporate as much of the existing process as makes sense for our group, because we do want to respect that a lot of our ability to put out press releases and send Arlington alerts and notify the public when there's opportunity for comment or review or input is going to be through their staff and resources like Arlington Alerts. So we will circulate that document with the COB very shortly so that everyone has a chance to review it. We wanted to let the public know that we have our internal communications in place. We have our county email set up and the teams. So we'll be using that to coordinate individually. We are also working in teams of 2 in some instances, like Jim and I on training, or David and I on communications, but to not violate the public meeting and make sure that we're not deliberating on anything in smaller groups offline. So as it pertains to external communications, we envision that this may involve some website updates, things like we were just describing about the meeting minutes, pushing maybe Arlington alerts, for example, for major milestone accomplishments, opportunities to provide review or comment, make sure people get those maybe a little bit more targeted. written statements, things that we want to issue, maybe more formal reports or comments that we may have on ongoing activities, media interviews, other sort of related scenarios. So again, we want to make sure that those COB all have a chance to provide input to this list, and make sure that we coordinate with Arlington County staff on which protocols would be appropriate for different types of outreach, and mostly that everyone has a common understanding and feels represented by the communications that David and I are working on the COB's behalf. Similarly, for the outreach plan, as David said, we recognize, and we just heard from Chief Penn about how comprehensive their outreach is. I know that the county staff have their separate outreach, and we want to make sure that we learn and are not reinventing the wheel or, treading down, the same path and exhausting people. But we do recognize that there may be gaps in those, and that that's part of our sort of specific mandate is to make sure that folks who have input or feedback have the ability to be heard. So we want to develop a draft list of some independent pathways through which people can communicate directly with the COB about related activities, and we'll compile this into an outreach plan that we will circulate for review and feedback. As a few examples of what we were envisioning in this, and again, some of this already exists, some of it may be proposed, but we want to make sure that both organized groups of folks with common interests, as well as individuals or individuals who may not have been willing or able to speak directly through existing outreach channels, have the ability to talk to us. So, being able to submit content online is probably a likely pathway for people to be able to use. And then also something we had talked about was maybe scheduling between our monthly meetings 2-member or with the IPA office hours, that folks could know that we're available if there is something that they would like to understand better or talk about specifically. So next steps are to, in coordination with Arlington County staff, complete a draft version of each document and circulate those to the COB members, so that you all have a chance to review and provide comment and input. And please be generous with, feedback. We certainly want to make sure that this is something that's very useful and also that represents all of our sort of common vision. We're imagining that these documents would be incorporated by reference into the bylaws so that we can update them as needed without necessarily having to change the bylaws. We're working with Graham to make sure we understand how all of that works and that we're doing this, in accordance with the proper protocols. And then once that's all approved and said and done, these are documents that will be published on the COB website. And since we are a new body and may come across situations that we didn't anticipate or that go differently than we anticipated, we'll plan to review and update these documents at least annually. So that is our presentation. Here's our contact information again. David, Mummy, and I have sort of been through all of this. We would love to talk with anyone if they have questions. Otherwise, I'll open it up for questions.
Great, thanks. I will really appreciate. Oh, Gary, go ahead.
My only question is, looking ahead, the roadmap ahead that we're kind of building, when do you anticipate securing the rest of the COB's ideas or inputs? Looking ahead, I know that you mentioned that several times, getting us to all kind of get our input in. So what kind of timeline do you envision that?
I think that we will share draft documents with the COB before the next monthly meeting, but we probably have 1 or 2 more meetings in coordination with county staff to make sure that we understand what resources are available and already exist. I don't anticipate that we necessarily need to approve them at the next meeting. And again, I think we want to get a better idea from Graham and Lisa and Mummy on how we're going to create the bylaws and when all of that needs to be approved. So in the interim, there are a couple of protocols that we think take priority, like, for example, media outreach and how to coordinate internally with county staff is something that we have discussed. But I guess I can make a commitment to circulate a draft version of these documents in the next week so that you guys can start to see sort of the shape of what we're looking at, and then get you guys in the loop more on the input that we get from county staff. Does that sound reasonable, Gary?
Yes, I would just kind of, I'm not in a hurry, but I just wanted to see what you guys envisioned. And
Certainly.
that sounds sound to me. I don't know what Lisa thinks, but I think that sounds like a sound way ahead.
Excellent. Thank you for your question.
Yes, well, I keep bringing up the meeting, the outreach thing. This is like, I know that all of us think this is incredibly important. So I really appreciate you guys putting your time and effort into it, because it is really important. And yes, I mean, I'm anxious to have something approved so we all have a plan and a way forward, but I'm also understanding of people's other commitments in life. But if you think you can get something circulated by the next meeting, that would really be great. I was going to ask, are you thinking in the plan to identify particular potential groups, not necessarily by name, but just, like business owners as a group or something like that? And were you going to propose maybe sort of a timeline, or should we be thinking of a time? I mean, we definitely should be thinking of a timeline for rolling it out and how we're going to do it. Yeah.
I think both documents will include a schedule. I think the communications plan schedule would be higher level, and just sort of that most of those are going to be on a recurring basis, except probably solicited, media conversations. For the outreach plan, I guess I'd be hesitant to make a list of people, since that opens us up to have left people off, and the whole point is to be comprehensive. But knowing that we have had outreach from some groups already, and that we want to make sure that we are comprehensive. Part of what we were thinking through in that sort of matrix is that we want to think through who the audience types are that we're talking to, that like where there are organized community members, that's a really useful forum we can build on for our outreach pathways. And I know that Arlington County staff have done a lot of work to create existing pathways and trust with groups like that. We just wanted to be mindful that we do have a need for independence, and that there may be folks who, because of the nature of our work being a little bit different than other Arlington County commissions or groups, that we be really easily accessible and create sort of a safe space for folks who are not part of those groups and may have different input. So we will definitely include a draft schedule. I think that kicking off those activities is something that we'll probably want to be prepared to do shortly after we sort of finish our training. I know right now we're all still sort of got training wheels on. So we're working with county staff on that, and we'll be eager for all of y'all's suggestions and input. What we're trying to make is a framework. We don't want it to feel done and that, there's not room for suggestion. We just thought that organizing it so that it's easy to review and keep track of, and that we can make sure that we're being comprehensive in that way, would be useful. So David, what about you?
No, I think that's right. I think of it in terms of proactive outreach that the board can do to identify existing groups or institutions, and reactive or passive feedback or input. And as you've described, Julie, I mean, I like the idea of having office hours, scheduled office hours, if you will, where maybe 2 members of the board are available on a set time for people just to call or chat or whatever, so that we do it both ways. I mean, there's definitely going to be some regular outreach to existing groups. I mean, so encompassing both of those things, I think, is important, and I think that's the broadest way to get the most input from the widest range of people. Because sometimes, what an individual person might have to say who knows what it could lead to. I mean, it could be the tip of an iceberg. It could be very valuable in any respect. So I think we want to be open, and I think the way that and Julie's really done a fantastic job on this, but the matrix allows us a way to do that both proactively and passively, if you will.
Great, that sounds really great. I did want to clarify when I said identifying groups, I didn't mean formal
Specific
organizations. Yeah, like
Correct.
you know, like as you said, like businesses or I think Dave at one point you said, you know, parents, or, you know, like
yeah, schools or something.
I really liked that because it made me think about the different ways that people may be thinking about law enforcement in Arlington and may interact with them in different ways. And so I kind of liked that just because it sort of helped me think about the different touch points or ways that we should think about, you know, gathering information. So that's what I mean. Like I found that really helpful when you said that.
I have not been able to reach out, and partly I was waiting because he gave us that training while on vacation, but there were a couple of points of contact in our last meeting that had described their efforts to create comprehensive outreach, and I think that incorporating an acknowledgement in our plan of what outreach already exists through specifically the police and the county itself will help us identify gaps. Again, I don't think that, you know, people want to meet with, you know, those organizations don't always want to have too many meetings, but figuring out on what schedule they're currently being contacted and engaged and having touch points with all of them to solicit their input and feedback about, you know, would they like an opportunity to speak? Because part of what I see is that I think I think a big part of what we're going to want to do with the outreach plan, and this is my personal opinion and not in any of the sort of draft documents, but is to use the existing channels of outreach to make people aware of the more secure, sort of confidential one-on-one places where, you know, I'm not entirely sure how useful, you know, a meeting with an organization about some of the content that we may have to consider is, you know, in that deliberative way. So I think part of what we want to do is make sure that we're efficient and effective in using Arlington's existing staff and resources to bring awareness to, for example, office hours, or maybe a website, portion of our website where they can submit comments or, you know, email us individually so that we can get some assurance that folks with concerns or needs that they feel are unmet can talk to us and have the ability to do so. So that's my 2 cents.
And actually, one other point just to add, I think it's actually in the ordinance that, and we'll need to talk to folks at the county about how to add a way for the public to make a complaint, like a formal complaint, which is a little bit different than just input or outreach. But so there's different levels, right? There's a formal complaint, and the public can already make that to the police, but we need to be able to set up something where they can make a formal complaint to the board, and then separate from that, just talk to the board or, you know, provide input about whatever, even if it's not a formal complaint. So there's a lot that we need to pin down, but I think we're headed in the right direction.
Hey, this is Gary. No, I agree, and thank you guys for this. I just want to share something. I know at our planning meeting, I shared this with Lisa, that one of my aims as the vice chair is to get us all involved. And I believe this topic, so we talked about getting input and everything, but even though Julie and David are the chairs, this is a team sport. And so the importance of us all giving our input and getting involved is because I see, as we lay out these different groups, each of us might be the one talking to them. And so we have to have a common message, this common framework. Everything that I see Julie and David doing is for all of us. So because I think we all need to be involved in this. And so I just wanted to share that, you know, Julie and David have done outstanding work here in this framework we're laying out. But really, the real power of this is going to be all of us sharing our, who are the groups and getting involved with this, and so that we speak with a common message. And that's what this framework is really going to allow. So I really believe the power of this is all of us contributing.
Gary, I'll say part of my initial inclination to sign up for this role was that I felt like, everyone's sort of doing their best right now to respond to the information that we're getting and the time with the training requirements. And, all of this is still so much in initialization, but making sure that we all understand how much time do I have to review this before it's going to go for, and how does it get approved and all that stuff. I think sometimes that can seem very procedural, but it is also a good way of reminding us all that, the completion, we may want to include provision in a protocol, for example, that everyone sign off that they reviewed a document, so that it doesn't happen that we circulate something and somebody missed it or didn't have any feedback and, later is confronted by a vote that they're not aware of. So I think that the collaborative and common messaging element of it are what makes me the most excited of just being, in a facilitator role. So thanks for that.
Hey, this is Sasha. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for developing that plan. So what I think Julie spoke on a little bit later, it seemed to me to be the major.
Sasha, you're cutting out a little bit.
It's really about. Sorry. It's about.
It's okay.
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. We'll see how long that lasts. I think my son is hogging the bandwidth. It's about like that web-based presence, which I think is going to be really important. I like to call people and talk to them on the phone. I think that we're in a web-based world now, and it seems to me that that should be a major focus, is giving people some sort of web-based way to contact, whether it's to contact the board. Like it's the most sort of like direct. I'm intrigued by office hours. I know that can be tricky, like if it's like if it's like just 2 hours once a week or something like that, that's not going to be as accessible as something that's available 24/7. So can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my thought, just so like I feel like if it's in addition to a 24/7 mechanism, then I'm all for it. But
yeah.
Totally.
And then
that's why I thought that framework would be helpful, is that we've got to think through getting creative and making sure that it's not just, oh, you have to show up in person, or, oh, you have to fill out a form. If you want to talk to someone, you can talk to someone. If you want to fill out a form online in the middle of the night, go for it. The office hours, David and I were talking about the office hours might be a good way to actually meet with different groups so that they're not actually just like a fixed 2-hour window, but they, could be in different places. And at different times to sort of really increase our visibility to the community and our accessibility.
Thank you. I also think that the other thing for me, I think we really need to shape, because it's not unclear to me like what the mission is, and that's all laid out in the ordinance, but it is unclear to me what we are trying to tell the community about us. Like if you were to meet a member of the community, like right now in an elevator, and be like, oh, well, I'm a member of this community oversight board, and what I want you to know about the board is this, right? Like it's unclear to me so that's that more proactive outreach. And I feel like it would be good to shape some talking points so that, I think someone else mentioned, like, so we're all on the same page. Like
we were hoping we would have something about that for this meeting, but we, I think probably because the holiday, just had not had the opportunity to coordinate fully with Arlington County staff. We definitely want to equip people with talking points. I would say in the interim right now, somebody asked me, I would say we're still getting organized and fulfilling our training requirements before we can start work. And I know that we are hoping that there's an opportunity for us to all come together and sort of frame some of those talking points so that they're not something that I write down and then everyone feels my initial input shapes, but that we could have a little bit more of a collaborative discussion about how do we want to reflect a common message about our objective and mission to the public. So right now I would probably stick to we're in training and forming
Well,
things
yeah,
out.
I mean,
But
obviously, right? Like
certainly
I'm not
we
trying
want to be
say-
equipped so that I
I'm
don't
saying,
say
like, down
something
the
that,
line. Yeah.
you know, to the grocery store to somebody who asks me that
Mhm.
others wouldn't feel is reflective of their
Right. I mean, I
input.
think it's a more forward-leaning statement, right? Is that I think I would like us to get to is like that we all have this common understanding. Like, this is what we want the public to know about this board, and I think it's important because, you know, so there's taxpayer money that went into creating it, and I think people want to know what we're doing and how we're helping. So I think it'll be important. I think that's going to be a really important message. And it kind of honestly ties back to this whole access thing. Like, you know, we're this board and this is what we do. And if you want to contact us, if you have a concern, here's a resource that, you know, that enables you to do it. Like, so there, it's like a full cycle, full circle. So those are my observations. Go ahead.
David's
Sorry.
point about being proactive too, that if we could have, you know, office hours as in groups of 2, one, that will give us a good opportunity to get to know each other, you know, better as a board since we can't meet in groups. But it also will give us the opportunity to create that visibility at different places, whether it's at school meetings or county board meetings or farmers market or whatever we decide are appropriate venues. I don't mean to suggest that as a formative list, but make sure that we're all on the same page, and that if I knew I was going to office hours, I would be prepared with the sort of agreed upon talking points a lot better than if, you know, I'm just being broached individually.
Right.
Ad hoc.
Yeah.
Mommy, did you want to add?
Oh, sorry. I had one more final point to make, if that's okay.
Yes.
Sure. Is that okay? Okay. The final point, well, I think you might have said this, but I just wanted to iterate that I think that it is important. Like, if we're pushing out county alerts, I think it might be helpful to push out alerts, not necessarily alerts, but there's a lot of publicly available information from the police department, which I think is really useful. So they push out information on, like, they're like safety tips on how to keep your car safe, or the 9 o'clock check and things like that. And I think that that's not an inappropriate thing for the county board to be pushing out. And in addition, they also push out a lot of good information about crime statistics and the types of crimes that are occurring. And I think that that's also relevant. And I think it also helps to build that trust, because we're supposed to be building trust between the community and the police. So if there's better visibility on what the police are, like what the policing priorities are, what the police current challenges are, I think that might help to build that trust.
So I think I have heard that from, you know, multiple people at different times, that part of what the community oversight board might be able to do is help increase the visibility of what the police do. I mean, what the police advertise or you know, have as alerts is probably a little bit distinct from our scope, but we want to make sure that in this document everyone has a chance to suggest what kind of content, you know, we would push in that way, and then we'll all have a chance to discuss it. So that's great input, and we'll definitely have the opportunity to address things like that individually.
So I don't want to cut this off. I should have known this would have been a bigger conversation. Mommy, did you want to say something before we move on? And I don't want to cut off the conversation. I think we definitely, as a matter of fact, Julie and Dave, if you're thinking of having a document ready for the next meeting, I think we should think about putting a portion of our next meeting to a discussion of this, because we haven't had the opportunity to talk about it enough. And I only put 20 minutes, which, what was I thinking? So anyway, Mommy, did you want to say something before we move on?
No, I just was coming on camera to just be more engaged in the conversation. I think though, just, you know, since I'm speaking, listening to this conversation further just emphasizes how important and how needed it is for the group to come together and create, you know, some sort of formal mission statement for the COB, so that we are all clear and have, you know, something that is like clear and concise to share with the public about what it is we're trying to accomplish as a police oversight board.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. That I think, first of all, I really appreciate Sasha's comments, and I think that what she's saying definitely lends itself to something we've all been thinking about, which is the need for a mission statement. And exactly that. Like, what are we here for, and what can we do? What can't we do? What can we focus on? What is outside our purview? So we have that clear mission statement so everybody understands why we're here and what we can do for the community, hopefully can do for the community.
Lisa, can I just add one final thought to your point? That's exactly what I wanted to really emphasize in the structural framework, that this is something we will update. I do not anticipate that our first draft of this, before we've really gotten started on the work, will be complete. So I think we want to make it very visible to the public that, on a recurring basis, we're going to revisit this and construct on what will be sort of living documents, but that we all have the basis and tools that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, did you want to say anything? I didn't. I want to give you both the last word before we move on.
Nope. I mean, I think we've got a lot to do, and some good people here to do it with. So I'm excited about moving forward.
Okay, great. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. This has been on my mind since the beginning. So thank you so much, and we look forward to having more of a conversation next time. So we're slightly behind. I had put the MOU development on the agenda simply because, like the communication and media and outreach plan, I feel that the MOU is so critically important, and I know I'm not the only person who feels it's critically important. It was in the ordinance saying that we were supposed to do it in 90 days because it's that important, and so I don't want it dropping off. That's why I keep putting it on the agenda, just to be able to give whatever updates I can, and just to say that currently we are actively in the process of putting together the infrastructure we need to be able to start drafting the MOU. And my hope and expectation is that by the time we are certified, so we've done all our training, that the MOU, my goal is to have it done and approved by the time we are stood up. Because without it, it doesn't matter if we're really the COB, because without the MOU, I don't know how we would function and do all the work we have to do. So we are moving the deadline, but for good reason. And I think it's going to allow us to have a really solid document. And we will keep working on it. And every meeting, I'm going to try and have more updates so that everybody knows what's going on. But rest assured, we are actively putting together the infrastructure we need to actually start drafting the document. So we are 6 minutes behind. So I hope that's we can move on to the team site. So as everybody's been mentioning, we're all really excited. Yeah.
Sorry, Julie had her hand raised.
I'm sorry, Julie.
No, that's fine. I just did briefly want to acknowledge that I think we're all eager to get the training done and get the MOU formalized, but that process may involve iteration with other parties. So while we have, a goal for the framework, that we do want to make sure we give that process all the time it needs to establish a functional relationship with those other groups. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you for keeping it on the calendar and providing updates. That's really helpful, I think, to the broader group as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the goal is a solid document. I don't think the goal is to meet a deadline, but I think deadlines are good because they keep you focused. So, that's why I keep saying let's have some kind of a deadline, because it keeps our feet to the fire. That's how I feel about it. If I have a deadline, then I know I need to be working towards it. But obviously, we want a solid document, and that is the priority. Anyway, I'm sorry. Okay, so the teams walk through the share site. So as we've all been saying, we're super excited that we now have a place where we can keep all our documents, and we're not all trying to manage 9,000 emails we're getting from different places. So to that end, Graham was very kindly going to walk us through what the share site looks like in case people haven't used Teams before. I haven't used Teams, I've used Google, so this is new to me. So Graham, go ahead, take it away.
Sure thing, thanks, Lisa. So I'm going to share screen. I have a presentation, and I'm going to share the PowerPoint with everyone afterwards. Based on what I've heard from folks so far, I think I'm actually going to change the approach. I was originally going to so the PowerPoint spells out all the steps to access everything. And I was just going to walk through the PowerPoint, but I think it might be best for folks to actually see me do it, and then you can reference the PowerPoint after the fact. So I'm going to start with the PowerPoint, and I'll switch over, and then I'll switch back to the PowerPoint at the end. So navigate. I'm not sharing yet. Let me do that. That's about to launch into it. All right. Everyone see my screen, hopefully. Great. Okay, so navigating your county accounts. So first things first, these are the same guidelines that I sent via email when we gave everyone access to your accounts. And I just wanted to give another opportunity to see if anyone had any questions about these guidelines and the proper use of county technological resources. If you have questions about open meeting, you can save them because we're going to go into that later. Okay, it doesn't seem like it, so we'll keep going. Okay, so what applications can you access with your county account? You have access to Outlook, which is your county email account, Microsoft Teams, which allows you to receive chat updates from the COB chair and vice chair and view COB documents. You have access to SharePoint, which allows you to access and share COB documents. It's the same documents that are available in Teams, but SharePoint will be used more once you've completed all your readiness and begin your official duties, because it's how you'll receive documents. I think it's how you'll receive documents. And then OneDrive, which allows you to access, share, and collaborate on COB documents. And then lastly, the Arlington County Learning Center, which allows you to access, view, and complete the virtual trainings. So we'll start with Outlook. All right, so to access your county accounts, you're going to want to start by going to myaccount.microsoft.com, which will take you here, and you'll put in your username and password. First your username, and then your password. I'm going to click no just for the purposes of the tutorial. You can do what you want. And then you get to this page, sort of the home page. So if you go to the, let me see actually if I can sort of illuminate my mouse. I don't know if folks can see it. Well, I'll just keep going. So if you go to the 9 dots in a square in the upper left-hand corner, click on those, you get the apps, and you can access Outlook, which gets you to your email. And I'm realizing now that I'm broadcasting my email. Oh no, don't do that. Okay. All right, it's not good. 1 second, sorry. So from there you get to email is the point. And these 9 dots are available on all the apps. So you can go to Teams. From there, back up so it doesn't go into my Teams. Actually, you know what? I will go into Teams so I can show you guys how to use it. Sorry, I hadn't really thought through what will show up for me. So from your Teams, when it loads, okay, so from your Teams, this is the COB team page, which is still loading. So I'm not sure what you all can see, but this is where the post section is where Lisa and Gary will be able to post updates for you all. And then if you go to files, that's where you can access the COB files. So from here, you can click on Open in SharePoint. Which takes you to the COB's SharePoint, which is just, again, still the same documents, just in sort of a different place. From these 9 dots in the upper left-hand corner, you can also go down and access SharePoint there. And you can go to OneDrive from here, which opens up documents again. You will see not that many documents, you'll just see this. And you can click into these. So for example, actually, let's do, if you wanted to go look at, let me find something that's not a PDF actually. So if you go into like, any document, it loads up with Word, and you can edit documents. From OneDrive and Outlook, you will see, so let's see, I've covered Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. From OneDrive and from Outlook, you'll see this little @ symbol in Commons. It's Arlington Commons. It's the employee portal, which you all do have access to in order to access the Learning Center, which is where you will receive your virtual trainings. So you can't access any of the things that employees can access, but you can see this sort of home page. But you just go down here to the Learning Center, and it will load up. You can click on your enrollments. And it will show up here as a learning plan. You also will receive emails to your COB accounts that have a link to them that say it's like a link to click on the My Enrollments page. And if you click on that, that will get you to the Learning Center so you can do your trainings. Are there any, that was like a very quick run through of how to access everything.
I have a question. Graham, thanks you. This is Dave Smith. Is there a way to make the email available without having to go through all the steps? Like just put something on the desktop that you can go to, or will we have to sort of type in my account, Microsoft, I mean, which I've done and is easy enough to do, but if there was a way to, put it on the desktop and just click into it more easily, that's my question. And then a second question is, in terms of posting documents to, SharePoint or wherever we would post them, is it the case then that once they're up there, anybody can edit them, or do we have to? I haven't attempted to do that. I've received documents and looked at them, but in terms of making them editable for everyone, is there some special trick on that?
Sure. So start with the first question, which was whether there's a way to access all of this from your desktop and not have to follow all those steps. If you already have the Microsoft Outlook and Teams apps downloaded, as well as OneDrive, SharePoint is entirely, I believe SharePoint is entirely accessible through your internet browser. But if you have OneDrive, Teams, and Outlook already downloaded and you're already using them with other accounts, I'm honestly not sure what the process is for adding multiple accounts to those programs. The Learning Center, it can only be accessed through the steps that I described. My best recommendation would be to open a browser, or open a new window of your internet browser that has nothing else in it, and log into everything there, say keep me logged in, and just keep everything open. And that way you can just pull up the window and have everything. That's my best recommendation. Julie, are you good?
I was just going to say, because I tried to work this through already, I was able to sign in to the desktop versions of Outlook and Teams on my personal computer, but because my work has multi-factor authentication baked into their Microsoft Teams, which I assume a lot of folks do, you can get it configured, but your default access may go to whoever owns that equipment, which depending on your organization, the policies may differ. So if anyone wants help setting up their personal stuff on that, I would be happy to walk you through it. I have had to do it for 2 different groups now, so I'm relatively proficient.
Thank you. That's definitely above my level, so I appreciate that.
I was going to say one quick tip for if you're having trouble accessing something through the web portal because it wants to sign you into a different account. Sometimes it's relatively easy to toggle, but if you can't, using an incognito window will keep it from logging you out of any of your other existing instances. So if you're going to sit down to do, several different things through the different portals, using an incognito window in Chrome can be a really good way to stay logged into both accounts in two different places without confusing access or getting logged out.
And if you're having trouble with this, or you think right now you're completely lost, I'll send out the PowerPoint tomorrow. Take a look at it, and if you are still completely lost, please feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to set up a time to meet and try to go over stuff and work it out. David, to answer your second question about uploading documents. So all of the documents that you find in Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, they're all the same documents. When you add a document to one, it automatically adds documents to the others. So there are a couple ways to add documents. You can add documents in any of the programs. To use Teams as an example, if you're so the starting place for Teams is this. If you go to Files, so say you wanted to add more agendas, you can click Upload. In my case, Upload Files. And I'm going to go upload the June 14th, what's this, agendas? Minutes. I'm just going to upload the entire June 14th folder. That won't let me, just wants to do files. Well, okay. So pretty much as simple as that. There it is. And now this should be shared with all of you, but we can go and verify that by clicking the share button up here. If it's not, yep, so it is shared with all of the COB Community Oversight Board members. So it is shared with all of you now. Does that clear that up, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. So you basically initiate a document just as you would from my own sort of there's no like county repository of like blank documents to start with. I just go pull one up on my own and then save it to my own file and then upload it to the group, right? Those are the steps.
Yeah,
basically.
so the example that I was just giving is if you, so say you have a COB document on, so for example, the PowerPoint that I think Julie made it, but say that you made the PowerPoint, right? And you wanted to upload that PowerPoint to OneDrive or to Teams. All you have to do is click the upload button and find the PowerPoint and upload it. Now, say you wanted to create that PowerPoint on Teams. You can do that as well. You just click on New and PowerPoint presentation, add a name, and click Create, and it'll open up, and you can make it.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Okay. Excellent.
All
Thank
makes sense?
you. Yep.
Sure. All right. And again, if you have any questions at all now, or actually for the purposes of time, actually, I'm going to ask that if you have questions, please send me an email. You can send me an email right now, but we do have a bit more to cover. So I'm going to move right along. And we're going to talk about Virginia Open Meeting Laws 101. And you might be asking yourself, what do open meeting laws have to do with technology? And I'm going to explain it. So at a very basic level, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act states that the public has the right to access the meetings of local and state public bodies. And so the three key things there are access, meetings, and public bodies. What is a public body? So a public body is the COB. The COB is a public body. It's any legislative body, authority, board, bureau, commission, district, or agency of the Commonwealth or of any political subdivisions of the Commonwealth. And you were created by a different public body, the county board, to perform delegated functions. Even though you are private individuals and not elected officials, you're not public employees, you are a public body. What does access mean? Access means that any member of the public has the right to attend the meetings of public bodies and inspect or copy the meeting documents. So meetings must be accessible to the public. There has to be a way for them to get to a meeting that's held publicly. Notice has to be provided at least 3 working days in advance. And the body is required to take minutes and make them available for inspection or copying, as well as any materials or documents that are distributed to the public bodies. And the third is meetings. And this is kind of the most important piece as it pertains to the technology assets that you've now been given access to, that are email and the document repositories. So a meeting is any gathering of 3 or more members of a public body to discuss or transact business of the public body, including all discussions, deliberations, and formal action. And that really should be or formal action. And that's not the legal definition, which I'll get into in a minute. That's like a very simplified version of what a meeting is. And that includes your email communications between your members if there is an element of simultaneity. And we'll unpack that in a second. Unpacking simultaneity. So there was a Virginia Supreme Court case in 2004, Becky Shelton, in which the question before the court was, does the exchange of emails between 3 or more members of a public body constitute a meeting subject to FOIA? So in 2 parts, they evaluated this. The first part they evaluated was, does the exchange of emails constitute a meeting? So they concluded that email communication is functionally similar to a letter sent by ordinary mail, because there is a significant delay before communication is received, an additional delay in response. But with computers and email, chat rooms, instant messaging, you can generate communication that is virtually simultaneous. So they concluded that the issue is not the exchange of emails themselves, but rather how the email is used to constitute a meeting. So this question of constituting a meeting. The Virginia Code states that it is a violation of FOIA for a public body to conduct a meeting wherein public business is discussed or transacted through electronic means where the members are not physically assembled. So I think that's fairly self-explanatory. There is an exception to that for, they've actually since created an exception to that, but basically remains true. And they created the exception for COVID, but basically true. In defining the term meeting, Virginia Code includes formal and regular meetings like the one that we're in right now, but it also includes what is called an informal assemblage. So since email correspondence is obviously not a formal regular meeting, the question for the court was whether email correspondence constitutes an assemblage. According to the court, the term assemblage comes from the Latin simul, meaning together at the same time. Therefore, an informal assemblage inherently entails the quality of simultaneity. So simultaneity is not present when email is used as the functional equivalent of letter communication by ordinary mail, but it might be present when used in other ways. The court actually specifically went out of its way to say that we are not determining what simultaneous usage looks like. We're just determining what it doesn't look like. So we know that when email is used, it's a functional equivalent of letter communication by ordinary mail. Simultaneity is not present, and without simultaneity, there's no assemblage. Without assemblage, there is no meeting, and it is not a violation of FOIA. In this specific court case, the quickest reply to this was a case where 3 members of a public body actually exchanged emails. And the quickest reply that was received to the original email was 4 hours. And the latest response was 2 days later. And the court held that that was not a meeting. So 4 hours is safe, but beyond, whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, the court doesn't have an opinion on that as of right now. So to kind of simplify this, or to apply it actually to your, I'll simplify in a minute, but to sort of apply it to your work, I have a couple examples. So on Teams, if a person sends an update about COB business in the chat to the entire COB and someone else responds immediately and another person responds 10 minutes later, that's a FOIA violation because the messaging is essentially simultaneous under the court's definition. On Teams, person 1 sends a private message about COB business to person 2 and person 2 responds immediately. That is not a FOIA violation because it's only 2 people and not 3. On Outlook, so via email, person 1 sends an update about COB business via email to the entire COB. within the next 4 hours, everyone has responded and a discussion has unfolded. That is a FOIA violation because it is simultaneous discussion about public business. You can go through and continue to see the examples, the other example about Outlook, but I do want to highlight the one about OneDrive because this actually does apply to collaboration on documents as well. So for example, on OneDrive, the entire COB wants to work together outside of a properly noticed public meeting on a document. They're all in the same document and in real time are making line edits, comments, and responding to each other's comments. That is a FOIA violation because they are making comments and responding to each other's comments, which is the discussion of public business without proper notice. For the second example for OneDrive, if they are not making comments and just making line edits, that's not discussion, and therefore it's fine. So that would not be a FOIA violation. To simplify this, basic guidelines, you can ask yourself 3 questions before you send a message or collaborate on a document or send an email with your county account. Am I engaging with 3 or more members of the COB? Are we discussing or transacting COB business? And are we doing it simultaneously? If your answer to all 3 is yes, you're conducting a meeting and it's in violation of FOIA. You can, of course, always ask. In our discussions with Mummy, the system we've sort of set up is to have you all reach out to her and she'll be able to get you an answer. But at this point, I'm going to stop talking and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has. I just threw a ton of complicated information at you all, and this is really important, so I want to make sure that you all understand it. And for the purpose, just to actually clarify one thing, because I think I forgot to say it earlier, the chat is in Teams is disabled for the full COB group to prevent sort of just like slip of the mind, like, oh, I'll just reply to this message type violations. So just wanted to let you all know about that, but I'm happy to answer any questions now.
Graham, just real quick, you said that if we are simultaneously making line edits to a document that would, but not engaging in commentary or chat, that's okay?
That's correct. Because
it's not, the difference being, I mean, it sounds like work, and on your last 3 questions, that sounds like simultaneous work, COB work, but it's okay?
So for the life of me, I honestly couldn't tell you how it makes any sense. Honestly, I think it's a large part of this is the fact that this court case was from 2004, before you really had the ability to do edit documents simultaneously, and the fact that the law hasn't really been updated to catch up with technology.
Right.
So I think it's there are a lot of gray areas here, and we're trying to ensure that you're operating in the safest way, the kind of surest way under the law. The understanding that I received from the county attorney is that simultaneous line edits don't constitute discussion and therefore are not a FOIA violation.
Although you could add a comment, if you're doing red line and you could have back and forth comments, that would be a problem.
Yeah, any form of, really, once you start with one comment, someone's going to say, well, let me put in a second one, and then you're
right.
off.
No problem. Okay.
So I would just avoid commentary on shared documents altogether.
Yeah. Okay. And in general, I mean, we're better off not all jumping in at the same time unless we are all clear that it can only be line edits, and that's somewhat of an unusual situation.
Yeah, there is no situation in which you all can write back and forth to each other instantaneously and not have it be a FOIA violation.
Okay, thanks.
Any kind of simultaneous communication. Oh, an exception though, I do want to add, I do want to be very specific as well. Discussing or transacting COB business, if you all become great friends and have a big life event that happens and you want to say, hey COB, I just bought a house, and email that to everyone and everyone chimes in and says, congratulations, that's awesome. That is totally fine. That is not a FOIA violation. It's the 3 parts are the number of members, whether it's discussing or transacting business, and whether it's simultaneous.
Thank you.
To help clarify, hopefully. a lot for everyone. All right, and I will send this presentation out tomorrow, but you know, if anything comes up in the meantime, please, yeah, Julie, go ahead. I think you're muted, or your mic might not be.
You all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Sorry about that. Yeah, that was very helpful. I really appreciate the clarification. I wondered if we could set up, if we can, or if we have to ask you, and either way is fine, but maybe some subsidiary listservs. And the only reason I think, I don't think this is a broad use case, but for the communications, for example, I think it would be helpful if we had something that if somebody wanted to email something to the COB, they don't need to send it to me and David and Mummy. They could send it to an email that would generate it to all three of us. There may be other use cases for that in the future. I'm not sure, but to sort of echo that, that should be a protocol.
That can be done. Worth mentioning, and I keep forgetting to include it and stuff, but there is currently a COB member listserv, so you don't have to type in everyone's email address individually, and it just sends it to everyone in the group. So let me investigate that. I think by creating additional channels under your team.
Well, it would still just be 2 members. It would be me, David, and Mummy. So it wouldn't be 3 people. And it would just be for people to contact us,
sure,
not to deliberate. Yep. Only as we develop those things, so that as we provide that.
I know, but the point is just that those like listserv, like general email addresses are generated by teams when you create channels, I believe. So the easiest way to do it is just to create a channel just for, I mean, it's essentially a private chat, but to create a channel just for, well, actually, I guess we would add Mummy into it too, but
right.
Yeah, I think you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't want to cut this off. Again, an important conversation, but we are running late at this point, and just respecting everybody's time. So we were going to take a break, a 5-minute break. So I'll entertain a motion to stand in recess until 7:21. Did I do that right? Yeah. If someone wants to make that motion.
I move that we stand in recess until 7:21.
Anybody else? Okay, great. And all in favor? Just say
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Nay.
Did somebody say nay? You're allowed to. I just want to know who was. No?
They did.
All right. All right. Any abstentions? No. Okay. All right. So 7:21, and then we will kick it off to. Can I say 7:22? Because my thing just changed over. 7:22, and then we will start our training. So see everybody in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and Lisa, I see that an international person has dialed in. It might be Jim.
Really?
Yeah, it's a +17 prefix.
It's just it's just, I believe it's a member of the general public. It's not a +17, it's a +1, and then
okay.
Arlington
All right, my
code.
mistake. So I don't see Jim. Thank you.
Okay.
See you.
All right. See everybody in a few minutes. Okay, I think we are back. As a matter of fact, I apologize, I'm a minute late. One of the problems with not having Jim here is that I was going to kick this over to Jim, so I'm not certain who I should be kicking it over to. Graham?
You can pass it to Captain Chamberlain.
Okay, fantastic. Captain Chamberlain, please kick us off on our training. Thank you.
Evening, the training is going to be regards to the systems management division. And in that division, you have both the support management section and the human resources management section. So I'm going to get started, and we're going to start with the support management section, Captain Jason Brick first. And here we go.
Good evening. My name's Jason Brick. I'm the captain of the support management section. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit, kind of high level about what we do, give you an overview. And the best way to start is to say that we're a lot of the back office functions that keep the department running. That without a lot of the things that happen behind the scenes, officers wouldn't be able to do their jobs day to day. And a lot of the stuff that we do is not only important to the officers, but it's critical to the lawful function of the agencies. So let me get started with different parts of the section. First one is the evidence inventory management unit. That is what you might call the property section, but we call it the evidence inventory management. So there are two sides to that unit, the evidence and the inventory side. The evidence is the most critical side. That would be everything the police department takes in pursuant to law enforcement activities. So every time an officer impounds a vehicle, takes a gun, drugs, a backpack, a cell phone, lipstick, or a fishing pole, this is where we house it. There are nearly 1 million pieces of individual items within our evidence side, from vehicles to explosives to guns to money, whatever. Keeping track of all that is a full-time job requiring 2 full-time employees for that. Actually 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee that came back on a short-term basis. Keeping track of where it all goes and how it does that is based on our LERM system. Everything's barcoded, so every time everything comes in, goes out, or someone checks it in or out, we can keep track of where it goes. But different things have different requirements about how long we keep them, what we do with them. For instance, at the end of each fiscal year, we turn over unclaimed money to the state, usually in the neighborhood of about $70,000 plus precious metals. So if a gold ring or diamond ring is not accounted for. Anytime things go to the lab, they go to court, citizens come to get them, it's tracking where everything is. We do routine audits on a monthly basis of what we have in there. Every time there's what's called a change of command, we do a larger audit. So when the lieutenant changes over and moves on, we'll do a foreman piece audit randomly generated by the computer. We have a very tight ship, is what I like to say about it down there. We don't lose things. And I can tell you from a lot of law enforcement agencies that the evidence side is where some of the highest liability comes in, such as, 5 years from now, we find out $40,000 is missing, but we're not sure which person had access. We have very tight standards down there with the regular audits and the organization we have. We're very confident that we run a very tight ship. Now, on the other side of the house is the inventory side. And that's everything that the police department buys. Not everything, but I'd say probably about 80% of what we buy that we use in-house. So you can think of our inventory management section as a mini Amazon warehouse. Everything from all the office supplies to the uniforms, to the accessories the officers wear, to batteries, to radio chargers. Keeping track of that. And what we have is also another full-time job. We have 2 full-time civilian employees who manage that, all the billing, the contracting, the RFPs that go out, dealing with credit cards, vendors, issues with our ballistic vests, fixing problems, you name it. That's unit is overseen by a lieutenant. He has a full-time job there just managing both sides, including part of the evidence side, which would be the impounding lot where we store vehicles that we have for one reason or another. The next one would be our digital evidence management unit, and that is headed by Lieutenant Matt Owens. That is a horrendous full-time job. That is all of our Axon-related body-worn cameras and in-car camera systems. That is a massive undertaking to keep that running, to keep that updated, to troubleshoot problems, to respond to requests for videos. That is a job that is not going away anytime in the future. It's obvious in law enforcement in this day and age that digital evidence and the means to capture it and store it is here to stay, and it's only going to grow. So Lieutenant Owens has his hands full. The CJRMS, that's headed by a guy named Michael Carrera. He does our records management, the back-end technology of our record management system to keep it running. So like any company, organization, you have to have people in the background to make sure when the officers are using their computers and everything's becoming digital. There's very little paper left in law enforcement. Going back when Captain Chamberlain and I started, I've been here since 1997. Everything was pen and paper, and whiteout was a standard, and used a ballpoint pen. Today, everything is electronic. So having these civilians to keep these systems running is critical, because once the electronic system goes down, we just come to a grinding halt. The logistics unit, that's headed by a sergeant named Kim Jones. She has 3 detectives working for her. One does court management, which is a full-time job in itself. It used to be that the age of paper subpoenas is how officers would get notified by court and changes. Like everything else in modern America, this is all electronic. So Detective Jim Toomey is the one that heads that up, and his job to make sure he keeps track of court dates for 300+ officers, different courts, different times, different arraignment dates, different hearing dates for different offenses and crimes, continuance dates, and just the utter amount of subpoenas that come through is a full-time job to keep that going. We have 2 other detectives named Tim Cook and John Adams. They do our online reporting, and they handle a disproportionate amount of police reports that are taken, especially not only with COVID, but with staffing challenges that I'm sure you're aware of we suffer, and the rise of technology. These 2 guys handle a disproportionate amount of cases where people can log into CopLogic, our online system, and they can file police reports online and not have to actually see an officer. Now, these 2 guys actually go above and beyond. They don't just act as data managers. They're actually taking cases, working them, writing search warrants, actually following up with the people who are putting these reports in. So again, it's all technology based, and their job looks a little different because a lot of times they're not out there in a police car or uniform, but they're fulfilling this job disproportionately. What would you say, like 1/3 of our, it's something like 1/3, the numbers fluctuate a little bit, but if you took all the officers taking reports, these 2 guys take about 1/3 of what we do out there.
Yeah, last month it was 36%.
36%, okay, so a little higher, 36%. I have another civilian working for me named Richard Schmidt. He is a retired officer who is here close to 30 years. He helps with what we call asset management. So all of our police radio programming, cell phones, helping me with our fleet vehicle management. That is a full-time job between the 2 of us. I'll come back to the fleet vehicles in a little bit. And then we have the administrative support unit. That's all civilians. A lady by the name of Martha Del Cid heads that up, and they take care of all of our electronic records. And they have a massive job because it is not, again, secretarial or data storage, but what they do is make sure that all of the state and federal requirements for reporting and what we have to report, what we have to record, what we have to retain is done correctly. And they are the gatekeepers and the repository for the complicated IT system. The front end is simple for the users. It's like your iPhone. It looks simple when you push the buttons and you do what you want, but the back end operating, when officers are taking reports, it goes into their MDT, which is something we call mobile. That then goes into cyberspace, and they have to then download that into LERMs and what's called merged records. And of course, like anything else, there are going to be errors or omissions or things they have to fix. So a lot of times they spend their time reaching out to officers, fixing what are understandable but clearly administrative errors that need to be fixed. This piece was in the wrong block, or they forgot a piece of critical information. And they're responding then to requests for records, insurance companies reaching out on a daily basis for accident reports, or citizens for accident reports. The false alarm unit is handled there. This is when officers go to a alarm call, it turns out to be false. There's a whole county ordinance and plan for how we record that, potentially charge people money on some basis, and keep track of that. Fleet vehicles, let me come back to that. The police department has the largest number of vehicles of any agency in the county, and for good reason, because of everything we do. So everything from the standard police cars you see, the kind of Ford utilities like the Explorers, pickup trucks, motorcycles, trailers, sedan vehicles. We have about a little over 300 different vehicles right now. If you include trailers and other things we have, and managing that is a full-time activity. We have some significant challenges with that. I'm sure everyone is familiar with these, we'll call them supply line problems in our economy. So getting vehicles and getting all the things that go into making a police vehicle is proving a significant challenge over the last couple of years, and especially now. So when we lose vehicles, or as we had on the 4th of July last night, we had one vehicle totaled from a DUI accident. Someone plowed into an officer on duty, and then we had a bad guy, armed robbery suspect, try to flee from the police and ram 2 cars. So that puts us down 3 vehicles. Now, if this were 5 years ago, that wouldn't be that big of a deal, but now trying to get those cars fixed and replaced is going to be a significant problem. As an example, we have 23 vehicles now at one of our contractors, nearly ready for delivery, but they've been held up for about 4 to 5 months because we can't find all the parts and the labor to put them in. So a police car isn't just a car you buy off the lot. So then you have the emergency lights, all the electrical harnesses, you have the MDT mounts, shotgun and rifle racks, different light packages, different vaults and equipment in them, and all that takes expertise from contractors to install, plus all the parts that come from different parts of the globe to put them in there. The fleet is slowly moving towards electric. That's been one of the county board's initiatives, shall we say. The infrastructure simply isn't there yet for us to go full electric in this county, but we're moving in that direction. Our PSAs right now have 5 electric vehicles, Nissan Leafs, and I just ordered a electric pickup truck for the community engagement division and a Ford Mach-E to test somewhere. We're not sure we're going to test that. But there's a huge logistical challenge with electrical vehicles because they have to be plugged in. And right now we don't have the infrastructure throughout the county to do that. And it's not as simple as getting an extension cord and putting into a wall. We need either what are called level 2 or level 3 chargers throughout the whole courthouse area and probably different parts of the county to make this work. The electric stuff is coming. It's just that we're not there yet to make it feasible full time for us. And I think that is the overview of what we do. It takes all of these people, about 27 people in this section, to make it work on a daily basis. Do you have any questions I can answer or feedback?
That's helpful. Thank you.
So thank you very much. That was very helpful and interesting to hear about. Does anybody have any questions in particular? I was sorry to hear about your car being totaled. That's unfortunate. Any questions from anyone?
No, it was really helpful to get an overview and a rundown of sort of the scale and magnitude of some of this stuff too. So thanks. That's
and an understanding of the challenges that you're currently facing, which I think we all kind of understand currently. No, it doesn't sound like there are any. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. Should I throw it back to Captain Chamberlain or?
Yep. So the next person we have up is regarding our human resources section, and it's Captain David Green. He will speak to that, and then the rest of the training is going to be on recruitment and retention when he completes, which is part of his team. Go ahead, Dave.
All right, good evening. My name is Captain Dave Green, and I'm the commander of the Human Resources Management section. So my section is responsible for the administrative functions of the police, of personnel management, such as recruiting, background investigations, employee pay and benefits, and the training of both our sworn and non-sworn employees. We're responsible for providing in-service training and coordinating with the police academy. We administer all the promotional tests throughout the department and all of our assessment centers. And we handle all of the award ceremonies, such as the Principal of Government Service Awards. And we also take care of all of the promotional ceremonies and retirement ceremonies that take place, unfortunately at a rapid rate these days. My section is responsible for payroll and personnel related processes for the police department employees, which also includes ensuring that employees and supervisors are aware of both their rights and responsibilities in regards to employee-employer issues and concerns. We maintain all the official employment records of our employees, and we act as a liaison between our employees and the County Human Resource Department. I report to the Deputy Chief of the Systems Management Division, which is the same Deputy Chief that Captain Brick reports to. My section is assisted by a lieutenant who specifically oversees the training and career development unit and the tactical training units, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. There's 4 units to my section. I believe Latasha has a PowerPoint there, if you can bring that up. Josh, do you have the PowerPoint, or do I need to see if I can find it?
Give me just a second. I'll have it right up.
I know for me, sometimes it's a little easier with a visual representation of how things look. But I'll start off while she brings that up. So one of my 4 sections is the Human Resources Unit. That unit is supervised by a sergeant as well, and he is supported by 3 civilian staff members. The unit is occasionally employs interns, and we also are supported by, a lot of times we have officers go on light duty quite often. Like right now I have one that's a long-term light duty person. They're working with us to assist us with the workload. They liaison with county HR and personnel, compensation, and benefit matters. They coordinate all department secondary employment. We take care of all time reporting and attendance. We maintain all the personnel records. We coordinate and oversee all of the promotional processes. And as stated earlier, we have oversight of all of our retirement ceremonies, promotional ceremonies, and the Principal of Government Service Award committees. The second unit that I'll discuss is our recruitment and retention unit. You're going to hear from these guys a little later, but I'll just kind of give you the overview of them. They're made up of 1 sergeant, and he's supported by 3 sworn investigators and 2 civilian background investigators. That team is responsible for coordinating all of our agency's recruiting, hiring, and screening efforts. And we'll get into that a little bit later. They also conduct all of our pre-employment character and background investigations, and that's for sworn and civilian staff. Most of our staff, even down to our administrative staff, go through a full background investigation, including the polygraph, just because of their exposure to sensitive information and whatnot throughout the police department. The training and career development unit, I think we're bringing it up there. So the training and career development unit is actually made up of the training unit and the training tactical unit, or tactical training unit. So there's 2 teams there. I'll break it up and talk about our training unit, which is supervised by a sergeant, a master police officer, as well as 3 additional master police officers, which instruct at our basic training academy, and 1 administrative support person who is a civilian that maintains most of our records. So she's in charge of maintaining our training records and certification for all of our sworn staff. That team develops and implements our training programs for both recruits and in service for our personnel. All of our officers are required to receive 40 hours of additional training every 2 years, and this team tracks all of that. They provide career track courses for sworn officers. So they provide, supervisor training to our new sergeants, career development training for our mid-level and executive level supervisors, and they provide essential skills such as soft skills for all of our sworn staff. They coordinate with the Regional Training Academy on a very regular basis, and they coordinate our agency's emergency vehicle operations training, which we call EVOC, and advanced skills technical driving. So we have a partnership. The Northern Virginia Regional Academy has a partnership with Prince William's Police Academy, and we have a track facility out in the Nokesville area, and that's where our officers do all that advanced training. The tactical training unit is the second unit that's part of that. They're supervised by another sergeant, and they're staffed by 5 officers, 2 of which are assigned permanently to our firearms facility, which is out near Dulles Airport. And then there's 3 additional instructors, which are sworn staff also. They coordinate our agency's firearms training and qualifications. They try to link together all of our tactical training, which includes firearms, defensive tactics, taser training, emergency vehicle operations, and tactical preparedness, such as TEC-C, which is an acronym for emergency care. They also work to elevate the agency's capabilities and our state of readiness for active shooters and domestic terrorist threats here in the community. Some of the problems that my section encounters, the biggest one that you've heard about in the news is just sheer retention for our police department. Nationwide, police departments are struggling to get qualified officers to stay. We're having trouble getting people to apply with our agency. As of Friday, this coming Friday, we'll have 50 vacancies in our police department. Now, that doesn't sound terrible, but because of the number of officers we have hired, we have an extraordinary number of officers in one stage of training or another, either in field training or at the police academy or waiting to go to the police academy. So when you subtract the number of officers that we have in some stage of training, and you subtract the number of officers that we have that have been injured either at home or at work, we're down to 282 functional police officers in the county, which is almost 100 officers below our authorized strength. And just fiscal year 22, which started last July 1st, so we just finished fiscal year 22, we've hired 32 officers, but we had 57 officers depart the agency. And since 2019, since January of 2019, we've hired 139 new police officers, which is more than a third of our agency. And that has still resulted in a net loss of 22 officers over that same period of time. These staffing constraints have made training difficult because obviously every hour that we spend in training is an hour that an officer is not on the street, but we find it, incredibly imperative to keep our officers as well trained as possible. We want to minimize, our liability. We want to maximize our opportunity with the community and have the best trained staff we can, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to send people to training and to provide training with our current staffing levels. We'll talk about training a little bit later again, but just to give you some idea, since 2021, we've provided approximately 110,000 hours of training to our officers. So that's a substantial amount of training. That includes our officers at the police academy and all of our in-service training. So that's a real quick kind of high-level overview of my section. We are going to hear from the recruitment and retention unit as soon as I'm done talking, but does anybody have any questions about what we've covered so far?
That is a lot of training. I was going to say that really dwarfs our summer-long accelerated section, but again, very helpful. Thank you for going through all of that with us.
Absolutely. All right, Captain Chamberlain, I think Sergeant Chkolsky's probably up.
Okay, so for this section of the training, there is a recruitment video that we would like to show you first. And this is played often in our recruitment series. And then Sergeant Chukolsky and Sergeant King will step in.
I don't think I can hear any audio. Anyone else?
Yeah, there's no audio.
Okay, stand by just a second, because we have audio on our end. Hold on one second.
It might be in the
Yeah,
Teams meeting settings.
From your share, if you click stop sharing and then go to reshare, there's just a little like thing you have to click that says include computer sound. It's like right under the share button when you click into it.
All right, let's try it again.
Thank you.
Hold on one second. It keeps going off every time the volume keeps going off every time we get ready to switch to it. Hold on one second. Can everyone hear it?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you.
Color. Attention. Color. Right shoulder. Pull. Color. Freeze it. Pull.
Duty.
Honor. Commitment.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna try this one more time. Were you able to hear everything that time around?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hold on one second. Why is it not giving us the whole show?
Color. Attention. Color. Right shoulder. Pull. Color. Freeze it. Pull.
Duty.
Honor.
We're police officers, but we wear different hats. Being a role model, primarily for, the schools and for the school systems, educating the youth about, what we do and earning that trust, because the public's trust is, a big part of what we do. And so whether it's in the classrooms or even during lunchtime, eating lunch with the kids, or, meeting with teachers about lesson plans and, course of instruction, that's, a lot of what we do. It's something where, for me, one of my strengths is dealing with people and talking to people, communicating, building relationships. And I think it's important to be in the schools and build that relationship, with students and then also with staff.
I want to become a police officer because I was in the Marine Corps for 9 years and I served the country. And now I want to serve the community. As a Spanish officer, build that relationship between the Spanish communities and the police departments. I think it's a little barrier between the Spanish communities and police, so I want to be part to, so they see a police officer like a Spanish guy, so I can pretty much build a good relationship between the community and the police department. All that little second or 2 seconds that you take asking somebody how they're doing, they may change a relationship between you and the community.
Even the smallest call, I put my everything into. That's what we owe our community. That's what they expect from us. Ever since I was released off field training, you ride solo in the car by yourself. The good thing that keeps my mom at ease is that we do have backup right there. We're a small county, so within a matter of seconds or minutes, your backup is there if you need it. Never a doubt that there's backup that'll be right there. Just knowing that you're making a difference, whether it's taking a drunk driver off the street, responding to an overdose and saving somebody's life, just going above and beyond to restore justice and show people that we do care, just really making that difference in people's lives. When people ask me, how is it being a police officer, I tell them I have the best job in the world.
The actual skill behind riding a motor and the way that we ride motors is pretty important, especially with, we're doing escorts all the time. We do Medal of Honor, but a lot of funerals, whether they're local funerals or funerals for Arlington National Cemetery, when we're going, everyone's looking at you to hold yourself to a very high standard, and our motor school does do that. We're all over the place. So we're in DC doing escorts, we're in Maryland, we're in Fairfax, we're in Alexandria, so we're always working with other agencies. So I think that connection, when you get that at the academy, is huge, because if you work in this area, you're not going to be just working with your agency, you're going to be working with multiple different agencies just because there's so many. Dealing with the community is really important. Every interaction, especially when I was in the motor unit, my goal was always at the end of a traffic stop for them to say thank you.
When I was doing a ride-along, I asked another officer, said, as a smaller woman, how do you avoid getting into, kind of violent confrontations with people? And she said, it's all about how you present yourself. So, especially for me, it's very important with how I talk to people, because I'm small and I know that. And I know I'm not going to want to get into a fist fight with someone that's, easily 3 times my size, which is the average human, really. So really, it's just about being polite and choosing your words carefully and listening really to what other people say. Because really, people, when they call the police, a lot of people just want to have someone to listen to them, to hear what's going on with them, hear their problem. And usually when people call us, it's because they're out of options. So we're there really to make something better for somebody else.
I think that if you become a police officer, it's something that you do because you want to be a part of something that, you know, that stands for something. You know, like I said, I was a strength conditioning coach prior to this, and I played baseball throughout my life with teams. So I've always been kind of in a team environment throughout my career, and we would always work together, you know, to accomplish a goal. And, you know, it's each individual, but it's the bigger picture. And I think that duty, honor, commitment has kind of built who I am. And I think once I did want to become a police officer, and I was looking for something along those lines, and that's what the, you know, police department stands for. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard in order to provide a professional service to these to the community.
I was really intimidated to go to the academy. I was really intimidated to kind of jump into this profession. And I remember when I got sworn in, like trying to hold it in when my dad was putting my badge on me, because I felt it was such a big accomplishment that the police department and the public were really putting their trust in me. And I felt honored to be able to carry out this duty and like make them proud and make our community safe. I'd tell people I would never go work at another local law enforcement agency. I wouldn't.
So with that, I want to introduce you to you, Sergeant Chukolsky and Sergeant King. Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? We'll get things set up here and put up. We have a little bit of a PowerPoint to kind of guide us through. My name's Sergeant Frank Chukolsky. I've been with the police department about 20, going on 21 years now. The last couple years I've been with the Human Resources Recruitment and Retention Unit. And then recently I've been transferred, and Sergeant King, who's seated to my left here, she's taking over for me. So we're going to kind of take this and try to show you a little bit of kind of what we do here and how we do things. So the police department right now for recruitment and retention consists, we have three detectives that are assigned to the unit. They are mainly charged with conducting the polygraph and background investigation into all the personnel that are hired. The background investigation for all of our applicants here is a lengthy process. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're selecting applicants and candidates for the position of police officer here in Arlington that meet our standards and that are going to be able to obtain the public's trust and do this job. You have to have a lot of integrity to do it. So as we're going throughout the process, we want to make sure that that's what we're vetting, that we're getting those people in the door. So we have the three detectives. We also have two civilian background investigators. The detectives, the sworn detectives, they handle all the polygraphs specifically for our applicants. So anybody that's a police department employee, and that includes our civilian staff, undergo a polygraph. It's not full scope for those of you that may know them from the federal government, but they do a polygraph on everybody that comes through the door to work here, whether you're civilian or not. So the three detectives do that. The two civilian background investigators, they're handling all the reference checks, local law enforcement checks. Pretty much, we get a lot of people in the door that went to college, right? I mean, I think like near 90% of our staff have at least a bachelor's degree. So we're recruiting people from all around the region that have obtained a college degree. They've lived in all these different places. Our background investigators have to make sure that they're checking in all those jurisdictions where those people have lived to complete their background. Captain Chamberlain brought up the state code here. This is kind of the basis of what we're looking for, the minimum qualifications, if you will, that we have to have. So you have, per Virginia state code, you have to be a U.S. citizen. This background that I spoke of, you have to complete a background investigation. You have to be fingerprinted. to be a police officer in Virginia. You have to complete a medical exam. That there is a, you kind of do a stress test, things like that. That's conducted here at INOVA, and then those results are forwarded over to our occupational health doctor, and he reviews them to make sure that they are able to, conduct the duties of being a police officer. You have to be at least 18 years of age. In the state up here, we require that you're 20 and a half. You have to look at this from the perspective of this code section is for every agency in the state of Virginia and the Commonwealth. It's just not Arlington specific. So a lot of these things that get put in there are kind of the bare minimum, if you will. You can't have any felony convictions. If you have a felony conviction, you can't possess a handgun, firearm. So that would be a problem, obviously, to be a police officer. You can't have any crimes of moral turpitude in your background. No lying, cheating, stealing, things like that. No sexual convictions, no domestic assaults, because most of the time with a domestic assault, you're looking at something that has a protective order, and in most protective orders, there's always something prohibiting you from possessing a firearm. And then you have to have a valid driver's license. You don't have to have a valid driver's license in Virginia, you just have to be able to obtain one here in Virginia. But we want to make sure that you do have a valid driver's license. Some additionals that we have here that are specific to Arlington that go above that Virginia State Code requirement, 20 and a half years of age at application. You have to have 60 credit hours of college. Now, the one caveat to that is you are able to substitute 2 years of active duty military service or 1 year of post-academy law enforcement experience in lieu of that 60 credit hours. So we do have those, we want to try to encourage our military to apply, and that's one way to get them through the door if they didn't have the time to achieve the 60 credit hours of college. Like I said, most of our staff, I think it's right around 90%, mid to upper 80s, has at least a bachelor's degree here at the police department. I will tell you from doing the hiring over the last couple of years, it's not like we're just stopping at bachelor's degree. We hire a lot of people that have master's degrees and doctorates. We have a few that have had law degrees. So there are a wide variety of degree programs and degrees that are here at the police department. Let's go to the next slide. So this is kind of a 1,000-yard view from above of what the hiring process looks like. Every applicant that wants to apply to be a police officer in Arlington starts at the acpd.jobs or at the website. They have to fill out an application that goes to our county HR. It's not housed here in the station. It's a county position, so they apply there. They complete their application. Once they complete their application, it is screened by county HR personnel to make sure that they met those minimum requirements that I spoke of in the earlier slide. Once county HR makes sure that they meet those minimums, then they are forwarded to us to test. Currently, our test, it's by a company called PSI or EB Jacobs out of State College, Pennsylvania. They're the vendor for our testing system or platform. They have to test here in person at the police station. That's a little bit of a hindrance for recruiting, to be quite honest. We're looking right now with the county at hopefully taking this to another testing platform that will go virtual, but we're in the procurement stages of that, so we'll see how it works out. But I'm hopeful that's going to happen, because with us having to go outside of the Arlington area to recruit police officers to come here, it makes it extremely difficult to have someone drive 4, 5, 6 hours to come here and take a test that they could possibly fail and no longer be eligible for the position, especially when gas is $5 a gallon. So and these are college kids that are already racking up tons of bills anyways. So they take the test, and if they pass, then we move them on to the background phase. You see the little thing there for ESOF. ESOF is our background or personal history statement. I don't know if anybody's ever filled out any type of form for the government for clearance or for a background, but it's a lengthy process. ESOF houses that paperwork all online. The applicants can access it from a computer, from their iPhone or whatever, and they can fill it out. It's going to ask them everything about where they've lived, what they've done, who they've lived with, where they went to school, everything you can think of, it asks for it. They complete that on ESOF. Once they have everything that is required to be uploaded in the platform, then they submit it, and we get notification here that an applicant has, successfully uploaded their background packet, if you will, for processing. Once the detectives get that, then they then conduct a panel interview. Panel interview consists of the detective that is responsible for the applicant moving through the process, as well as 2 officers, usually from patrol or in other parts of the agency. But we want to make sure that we have a diverse panel to interview our applicants. So it's at least 3 people. They sit down, they go through a panel interview packet with them, ask them tons of questions, kind of reaffirming the responses that the applicant has already entered into ESOF. After that panel interview, if they're recommended by the applicant or by the panelists, I'm sorry, they then move them into polygraph. And polygraph is really where the rubber meets the road, if you will, where we're going to be verifying what they've told us in ESOF as well as in the panel interview. Polygraph, usually takes a couple hours. They go through, they successfully complete that. Once they complete that polygraph and they're successful in it, they are then moved over to background, and one of my civilian background investigators then will complete the portion of residence checks, where they've lived, local law enforcement checks, court records, things like that. So while they're doing that, while the civilians are working on that portion of the applicant's background, we go ahead and submit them for a psychological examination. We use a company, a vendor, does a lot of agencies. They mainly focused, they were based out of the West Coast, out of Seattle, Washington, actually. However, they do a written and an interview with our applicants for a psychological evaluation. And they use the information that we supply them on the applicant, as well as the testing and interview that they conduct with the applicant, to then give us a rating as to whether or not the applicant is suitable for employment. Also, we schedule them for that medical. Once they go through the medical, like I said, the doctors, they'll give them kind of a physical, if you will, stress test, blood work, all that good stuff, drug screen. They get through all of that. And on the right side, you'll see there the hiring process. And I have underneath of that courage, competence, commitment, compassion, integrity, restraint, and respect. Whenever I put those up there because as we're making our way through the process here for the hiring process, we're evaluating whether or not our applicant upholds those core values here at the police department. We don't want to be getting somebody who isn't going to be able to achieve those core values, or it's not in their character, I guess. So as we're going through that, we're making sure that they're checking off on those things. If they go through that whole thing 2 to 4 months, hopefully they're successful. We give them an offer of employment, and hopefully they accept it. As of recent, they've been choosing other places. But we're doing our best to try to get them in the door here. And you go to the next one. So what we're doing to try to get applicants here through the door. So we have our ambassador program. Basically, the short story there, we have officers. Like I said, we have very educated group of officers that work here. We send them back to the schools in the areas where they came from. Right, we want them to go back. They have the most recent contacts there. Most of the officers that are involved in the ambassador program, have 3-4 years on. We want them to go back to the communities where they were hired from, and hopefully share about their experiences here in Arlington, what this police department is like, how we're different than other police departments, and why someone would want to come here and work. It has been very successful. We I mean, I go to that well often to use my ambassadors to go to the schools and to use their contacts to get us the opportunity to talk to people. It is highly competitive right now. Every law enforcement agency that I know of in this region, and really, I mean, I've talked with agencies everywhere, Philadelphia, New York, Colorado to New Orleans. I've touched, you know, I've talked to every agency through different recruitment events. Everybody's hurting for people. We're all competing for the same people. So anything that I can use to try to get a draw to come here to Arlington, that's what we're trying to do. And that ambassador program helps. They go to career fairs. They go to speaking engagements on campus. We even have relationships. Sergeant King and I were talking this evening. You know, we can go to some of the schools where we actually do presentations for the schools and for the different degree programs. Captain Brick has actually done them for me before. It really helps us out to get in front of the students. So we're also V3 certified, which means we Virginia Values Veterans Program. Like I said, we participate in those programs to try to get us in front of the military community to increase our recruitment there. We have a referral program where officers that are here at the police department, if they refer a applicant that successfully makes it through the field training process and gets you know, released on their own to be a solo patrol officer, they can receive a monetary incentive to for those referrals. I'm trying to think, what else am I missing? Handshake. So Handshake, it is a kind of a social online platform, if you will, that the schools are, that most colleges and universities, there's kind of two that are out there, Simplicity and Handshake. Handshake seems to be the one that's more prevalent. But by this, we're able to engage with the students directly. So the ambassadors that do recruitment for us, they create bios for themselves online through Handshake, and they're able to message the students where they went to school or even other schools. It does that. It's not exclusively to the schools that they went to, but they're able to talk to them, kind of engage them, answer the questions. I mean, there's a lot of questions out there surrounding policing. So I think sometimes students may have like a NCIS view of what policing is. So it's important that they hear from an officer who's been doing it for a few years so they can kind of get the real deal. And so Handshake enables us to do that. With the Handshake, we can also send messages to large swaths of candidates that may be interested in a career. We can be very specific about it. We can seek out students that have an interest in criminal justice or law enforcement that want to live within an hour's drive of Washington, D.C. So it's a really handy tool that we have at our disposal to promote and create our brand with the police department. We can also create events and do our own events. So this past fall, we did some different online virtual events, specifically focusing on HBCUs. And right now we're partnered with over 40 HBCU schools through the Handshake platform, and that's huge. We're able to do that outreach to make sure that we are getting a diverse work group here in Arlington. We did another one with the LGBTQ plus community, and we made a hire from that in this and she actually just graduated the academy last week. So those things help, and we try to stay kind of ahead of the curve if we can by participating in all these different events. Anything I'm missing there?
We also do a few more grassroots events too. We've got the Arlington County Fair coming up, which we will be participating in. We will have a table there in order for people to actually be able to come up and speak with us. The county block party will be there as well. So we are also trying to stay local and trying to stay engaged with the local community also. So there's a few other little initiatives that we're actually kind of looking at starting to implement. We're looking into creating a LinkedIn page, just redeveloping and redesigning some of our pamphlets and some of our advertising, which hasn't been done in a little while, to try and get things a little bit better and a little bit more out in front of the people that we want to target.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to create our brand and put it out there as much as possible. Just to give you a frame of reference, I did a little calculation since November. I drove just shy of 10,000 miles doing recruitment all across pretty much the East Coast, if you will. So, and out of that, we hired 17 people. So it's a very tall order to try to fill these vacancies that we have, that Captain Green said, getting qualified people in the door that want to do this job and be part of the Arlington family.
And to compete with what everybody in the surrounding jurisdictions are offering as well.
So we like I said, we try to stay successful with it, but it is not an easy task. We lost out this go around a couple of applicants to Capitol Police. Starting salary is significantly higher, as well as Prince William County. We lost several there, mainly because there's no reason for them when they live in Prince William County to drive through Prince William County to come to Arlington. So it's just cost of living wise and other issues that just put us a little bit behind the ball. But like I said, that's kind of where we're at. Does anybody have any questions? I know that's a real kind of quick and fast take on recruitment.
I don't have any questions necessarily, but I was just really impressed by the video and the efforts that you're making, finding the right people. It is, I can tell it's difficult and it's kind of frustrating because Arlington is a great place. And Chief Penn talked with us a little bit in an earlier meeting about the salary and hopefully some additional, salary that can be available. But yeah, I mean, my sense is that many of the officers can't live in Arlington or don't, and that cost of living is tough. But it's just impressive. I mean, I'm just impressed with how much you're doing. And while our mandate is to sort of be not a middleman, but to facilitate, additional communication between the public and the police. I'd be interested to know if you think there's something we could do to increase, hiring and retention for you guys.
Obviously, I mean, I think that if you, anytime that I can hire someone that is local to Arlington, and we did have, trying to think out of this last class, we did have a couple that just graduated the academy that went to WNL, one went to Wakefield. That's huge. And so I think some of it is anything that we can do locally here to spread the word, because we are a good agency. I think we set the standard pretty high amongst the other jurisdictions around us. And it's kind of like anything else in life. You don't know what you don't know. So if they're not hearing it, and Sergeant King mentioned doing those kind of grassroots local things, anything we can do to kind of get the word out that we are hiring and what Arlington Police is as compared to probably maybe what they see in the media, because we aren't that. And so, yeah, anything that you could do there, that's a huge help. If you ever have any contacts, like I said, we do a lot of these school presentations. I've traveled to East Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, New York, doing classroom presentations for students that are interested in the career field. Professors are always eager to have us present, but if you ever have any additional event avenues there that you can think of, we'd be more than happy to entertain those and to try to extend those olive branches.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
So do you do anything with the high schools? I remember when I was on my ride along, I was talking with the officer who was kind enough to take me on a ride along. And we were talking about, high school students and how you can start to engage high school students, because I do think it's a place to start getting people interested in the idea of policing. You know, the sooner they get interested in that, the better. I know that Yorktown, where my son is graduating from, does give seniors a 3-week internship toward the end of the graduation. So he did something at Yorktown. I don't know if the other high schools do that, but it was nice. It was only 3 weeks, and it was a great experience. So anyway, I'll stop talking. I'm just curious as to whether or not you do anything like that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, our community engagement division just implemented a teen police academy. And we're actually going to be participating in that in 2 weeks. There's going to be individuals from HR both running the physical agility test so that the teens can kind of get an idea as to what that's like and kind of get a run through that. And also there's going to be a Q&A session a couple days after that, so they can kind of ask like what the hiring process, what it is, kind of, you know, working for the police department, and just participating in that police in that teen academy allows them the opportunity to just kind of interact with officers at their level, you know, and have that engagement, which I think is excellent, because not only are these kids local, but they're getting a view of the police department that is different from what they see on social media, which is excellent. And so hopefully we'll be able to continue on with that and kind of, but I think that's really kind of the first time.
Yeah, I mean, we've had them in the past. We've had an Explorer program in the past. We have this Teen Academy. We have done the internship program that you spoke of. We participated, we've hosted students from that here. A big benefit, which we don't have anymore, was the SROs. I think that there was a benefit there. We, you know, some outreach that took place that we would get students that were interested in career opportunities, and they had someone to speak to directly. So there has been opportunities. We've talked about trying to do like a cadet program and things, but I'll be honest with you now, probably staffing with the challenges we have. We're trying to do what we can kind of with what we have to work with.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, that's the nice thing about that internship program. It's just 3 weeks. It's pretty, but I understand that even that is pretty time intensive. I realize that still requires a lot of resources. Anyway, that's great to know, because I know my son got a lot out of it. I mean, he didn't do a policing thing, but I know that it was had a big impact on him. Exactly. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. So there's a bunch of other people with questions. Gary.
Hi, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for the briefing. I have 2 questions. The first one is, so I still am pretty connected with the U.S. military, retired from the Air Force, and, you know, provide some advice to people. I was recently at a briefing where they updated us on the propensity to serve across all the services. And what they showed was that in the past 4 years, up to currently today, so 4 years ago, 26% of youth aged 17 to 24 were eligible to meet the requirements to serve in the U.S. military. That number has decreased by 4% past 4 years to 22%. So my question is, with all these programs, and you guys are doing great things, is this phenomenon, are you guys under the same thing where the requirements, whether they be physical, mental, all the things to become a police officer, that there's a declining percentage of youth who can meet those requirements? That's my first question. And my second question more relates to our role as a community oversight board. And we know we're in a great community here, but have we had any, even inside the police, without the COB, where we've had any incidents where, you know, the internal affairs of the police are doing their due diligence after a complaint, where you guys take a look at recruiting and access to the police, to the police force? So those are my 2 questions, and thank you.
I'll take the second one.
Okay, so for the first one, the shorter answer is yes. I mean, since I've been in this position the last 2.5 years, We have seen a steady decline in the number of applicants that are testing with the police department. I want to say last calendar year, we ended up testing right around 299 people for the position of police officer. So you talk about that 299, and you probably have we usually have about a 70% pass rate on the test. So you can get rid of that 30% right off the top that just don't make it past the very first stage, the testing, the written test. And then, you know, you kind of whittle your way down to where we hired 37 people in that calendar year, what the number there. So yeah, we have seen a decline there in just the numbers, looking at it from a pure data-driven standpoint. I don't know what the answer is there. Like I said, we're trying to do the outreach side of things to try to get more interest, to get more numbers in through the door, to hopefully have more people be successful. But we are seeing an increased rate of people not interested, not applying, not testing. And then you couple that with, once we do get them here, failing a component of the process. So yeah, it is extremely difficult. And then for your second question, Captain Chamberlain actually said she was.
I'm sorry, can you tell me what that question is again about internal affairs?
Yeah, so, you know, I'm thinking about our role, and first of all, I'll tell you, I'm certainly interested, whatever we can do. You know, I'll have to look at the ordinance and, you know, our charter and everything, but I'll tell you, if there's room for us to help this problem, you know, I'd certainly like to investigate it, you know, inside of what we're supposed to be doing for the county. So, but the question is, you know, prior to the comp, you know, if there's been a complaint on an officer, and you know, internal affairs is doing your own internal look at this. Has recruiting been one of the items on the look or the review of this particular incident or, you know, complaint? Has recruiting been something that has been a part of that internal affairs review?
Okay, I think I understand the question. So one of the things that we do for every complaint is always reviewed. However, I would take a look at what are the persons that are complaining. If you were to take a look at that group and determine if any of those could potentially be candidates, or if that has changed, I would look at that realm first. I don't believe the impact is there. We did some studies that I was partnered to and privileged to back in 2017 that was specific to that in terms of who were the complainants and what those experiences impacting them potentially being maybe inclusive into the community. From what I can see, I would say no. But there were other people that were on that team with me as well, and we all agreed. So I think I'm answering the question that you're looking for there.
Yes, and specifically, I'm thinking like social media. You know, was something overlooked or blah blah blah? I think, yeah, that probably is the hot button item.
So you're talking about in the hiring process?
Yes. So, you know, different agencies have different rules on use of, you know, can we look at social media? You know, did we miss something? You know, particularly with knowing that we need people. So, yeah, just any, you know, that's kind of what's on my mind is. Okay. And it's really, it's really getting back to that little circle you have where you have, I think I saw ESOP or whatever. So just kind of what's the process in the policy on use of social media.
One thing that every applicant or every employee here goes through, if they separate from the department, whether it's a resignation, for any reason, there is a exit interview. And from that exit interview, we may gain some knowledge to how we conduct business here. Was that a decision maker? What are those things that are impactful? I would say one of the things that Chief Penn and one of the things that he shared with you guys specifically was a lot of our things are officers are leaving and they're not staying within law enforcement. In terms of, we don't have a high number of terminations. But I will tell you, in the cases where there were terminations or people resigned prior to terminations, however you want to look at it, in each of those instances, we always go back and look in our hiring packet to determine where did we miss something along the way? Did we not dig deeper to see if that person, you know, that this behavior could potentially happen? Even to when generational changes have taken place over time in us, how we actually conduct our processes of what we're hiring. So yes, social media is a factor. Those polygraphs, those psychological exams, those views have evolved. They have not been the same in what we're looking for. We have chosen to evolve those lines of questions. The lines of questions that I was asked, or myself or Captain Brick were asked when in our hiring process, those questions look differently now. And that has really been geared by the society changes associated with how we've evolved as communities. And then also to go along with the things that are important to our community from our, you know, conversations with them, to make sure that we're bringing in people who have that level of skill and ability. I will tell you one of the questions in particular that we, and how we interview people is very, very concerning in regards to soft skills. As many of you know, most of our kids now, we are big on our thumbs, right? That's how we communicate, is through the thumbs. So it's a matter of making sure that people are able to communicate and have the interpersonal communication skills, as you may have seen in the videos, about that level of communication and showing that level of compassion. And as Sergeant Chikolsky spoke to, is that at every step of the way, we're examining those, and those have changed throughout the course of our hiring process through the years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Sasha Ridley. I had two quick questions. First of all, I wanted to thank you for the great presentation. And the other questions I had were, number one, are there any sort of like external benefits that might be sort of more attractive to the college set? Like, for example, you know, under the previous administration, public student loan forgiveness was like, it was not really a given, and it was really difficult. But under the current administration, it's much more of a likelihood that if you serve in public service for 10 years, your student loans can be forgiven. So I would love to, you know, to hear whether that's something that you guys are able to play up in your recruiting efforts. And then the second question I had is just coming from this board, something that I would absolutely love to see is like a police force that recruits and retains like a diverse workforce, especially women, just because I think nationwide there's like a really low percentage of women in the police force, and there's so much like importance of having a gender perspective in policing. And I would love to hear, you know, if there's any sort of like women in policing career events or any ways that you guys reach out to women specifically. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so for the women in law enforcement, you spoke of the national kind of averages there. We are well above that. We're right around 26%, whereas in the nation, they hover right around like 12, 13%. So we tend to do a very good job there. We participated in different events on campus for women in law enforcement. We've hosted our own virtual events for women in law enforcement, where we had an all-female panel that sat and talked and had questions and honest dialogue. Yeah, you actually sat on
the panel. So, and it gave a great opportunity for women and from all over the country who were interested to actually have a frank conversation with us, and for us to actually explain to them our experiences. And there was actually a diverse group of women within our department from a variety of different backgrounds, and also a variety of lengths of time here as well. We had women who were recently hired within the past couple of years, and you got people like me. I've been on for 15 years, so I have, you know, and you can see the transition. You can articulate and you can explain to them the difference in what you've seen over the years. So it was actually, those are really great, great opportunities, and we do actually try to leverage them every chance that we get. We also, with our ambassadors program, I can't remember the list off the top of my head, but there were quite a number of women who, out of the 37 people who responded back to me, who actually do want to be ambassadors for the police department, who were women as well. So it'll be nice to kind of leverage them as well and try to get them out there to do that.
And also to your question, there's this 30 for 30 campaign that you see a lot of departments doing. And that's because, from what Sergeant Tukolsky spoke to, that a large percentage of communities, they have about 12%. And 30 for 30 is 30% of their workforce being women by the year 2030. We're teetering right on that number. So, you know, from the perspective of the department, that challenge is really to maintain that 30 for 30, not really reach it, because we're almost there.
Yeah, just to give you some perspective there, we're currently hiring, we hired session 147, but 144 and 145 were both just shy of 50% female in both academy classes. So we've done some pretty good things there. As far as incentives, administration wise, you know, what's, you know, who's in power now, if you will, or in the presidency and his administration. I haven't really had that come up of anybody mentioning. I mean, they do look, kind of in a more broader sense, they are looking at the financial aspect of things. I routinely have applicants that are interested that then call me after they do their homework about what their salary will be and compared to what cost of living is here. And they just, you know, they're like, hey, Sarge, I really appreciate you spending time with me to talk to me, but me crunching the numbers with $80,000 in school debt and what it's going to cost to live there and move there, I just can't do this. And so I don't know if there's anything selling point wise specific to trying to highlight, you know, one administration over another's administration that would benefit them to coming into the career field, but they are looking at the financial side of it. So you know, and that's something we've obviously tried to work on, is make sure that we have competitive salary and things along those lines, if that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you so much for a fulsome answer to both of those. I think I might have cut somebody off. I apologize.
Mommy?
Thank you, Captain Chamberlain. Thank you all for taking the time to present to us on an evening after what I'm sure has already been a long day. My question, and I'm sure that there's probably some overlap here, but I know that you all highlighted both recruitment and retention during your presentation tonight. And I was just wondering, excuse me, to kind of switch gears a little bit too, that I also want to make sure that I'm understanding the other side of it. What would you say is the I don't know if it's down to like one or two, or like, what would you say are some of the top concerns that you all have identified regarding retention that you all are, you know, perhaps focusing on, or there's some initiatives around that we should be aware of?
I think compensation probably is a large one, is to make sure, you know, the last couple of years have been tough for the workforce in general. I think even outside of policing, you know, COVID took hold. I started in this position as COVID was ramping up, so it's been an interesting ride through it. But compensation's one. I think it's hard for a younger college-age students, and this is just my opinion and talking to them for the last couple of years, they don't really, they have a very short view of kind of, you know, they're not really focused on what I'm going to be doing in 25 years. They're focused on, you know, the upfront beginning. So I think when we get a student here or an applicant that we get through the process and we get in here, trying to focus on things that are going to keep them here, being able to afford and raise a family and start their livelihood here, trying to create programs here at the county to allow them to continue to get educated. I mean, I want to say the tuition reimbursement's like $2,200. I don't know how many classes that buys, but it's not many. So, and for us to have an educated workforce and to pride ourselves on that, we need to have some programs that would allow our officers to be able to continue their education, because I think that's only going to benefit the Arlington community. Anything you can think of retention wise? I mean, it just.
Some of it's just also, we're battling culture and media as well. And people's perceptions based off of what they see on TV and like you said, the NCIS effect, their belief as to what law enforcement is versus when they actually get into law enforcement and realize you're not going to be able to plug a fingerprint into a computer and have it turn around in 30 seconds and it gives you this person's, complete ID and exactly who did it, and you're going to get everything prosecuted. So trying to figure out a way for them to understand the reality of the profession without that becoming a frustrating barrier to them, and allowing them to still believe that they have some sort of ownership and some sort of ability to make the change that they actually do want to make. And they, a lot of these new kids are coming in here because they want to make changes and to help the community and things like that. And just, again, just trying to keep them engaged on top of, making sure that if they do want to continue with the department, they can afford to live in a reasonable distance from here and raise a family and have a house and not be, to have everything that people really want. So.
I think, us focused on commuter benefits too. I think right around 2/3 of the department does not live in the county. Does that number sound right? And so it's over 200. So that's a pretty staggering number. So we got to figure out a way to, as a retention item, to make it advantageous for people to want to come work here. And I think that if it's a recruitment tool, it probably can be a retention item as well,
And it's not that people don't want to live in the county. It's the being able to afford, having something that other than a, 1-bedroom apartment and having, being able to raise a family. So yeah, the commuter benefits, especially when you're looking at 95, you're either going to be sitting in traffic for an hour and a half or 2 hours if you're not paying the tolls, or you have to fork out, sometimes $40 to $60, round trip every day, in order to be able to not spend a couple of hours commuting. So, which, it takes a toll, especially when you're already working, 10 and a half hour days, not including, court time or any other assignments.
We've lost a lot of people that have a lot of time and experience here to the private sector and things. And I think some of it just comes down to that I'm probably in that, but I live in Fredericksburg. So I commute here from Fredericksburg. And I'm to the point where, like, you get to this point where you're like, it's probably not worth my mental anguish and suffering of driving here and commuting up the highway and dealing with all this nonsense. I'm going to find something more local. And I made the choice to move to Fredericksburg, but that was where myself and my wife, who's a teacher, could afford to buy a house. And I think that we're starting to see more and more of that where people are making those decisions, especially folks that have a little bit of time on, or if you are an educated person that we've recruited to come here, you have opportunity outside of this police department. You can go work for the private sector and make significant wages, and you can probably telework, and you can probably do all sorts of things that you're just not going to have the availability for here. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I tried.
It does. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions for us?
Okay, so great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And as Mommy said, I really appreciate all of you staying so late in the day. I'm sure you have other things to be doing. So thank you. Really appreciate it. But it's really helpful for us to understand from your perspective what's going on, particularly in the issues around retention and recruitment is so critical. So thank you so much. Okay, so with our training done for today, and Graham's going to walk me through this so I don't make a mistake, but I will entertain a motion to adjourn, given that we haven't finished all of our agenda items. Did I do that right, Graham? Or do I have to take them separately?
No, that works. Just before anyone comments on the motion, just a reminder of NACOL training on Thursday. But other than that, that's all set.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. NACOL training on Thursday. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn with the understanding that we didn't get to all of our agenda items because unfortunately Jim wasn't able to make it, but I'm sure, I know he wants to give us an update on the training, and I'm sure he will do that at the next opportunity. So I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Great. A second?
Second.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you so much, and see everybody on Thursday.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Good night.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Great meeting. Thank you.